Daniel chapter 5. We are well on into the captivity now. So, how long did the Lord say they're going to have to hang out in Babylon? 7-0. Yep. We are a good 40 plus now, it seems like, is what the scholars tell us. That's based, of course, on historical documentation that was already being recorded by the Babylonians. They were pretty good at keeping record. Of course, the Jews were too, but now they're in exile. And there are some that are keeping record as well. But they have been there now 40 plus years. We start chapter 5, verse 1. It says, Belshazzar the king. So who is this guy? We ended up with Nebuchadnezzar, remember, in chapter 4. And chapter 4 of Daniel is where, at least from my perspective, it appears to me that Nebuchadnezzar has a change of heart towards the Lord God. It took a while, right? Took a long while, but the insanity sort of tuned him in. And when he came to, he says, okay, I get it. I'm not in charge. Now, this is the big deal for Nebuchadnezzar. And I reminded or tried to remind us that this is our big deal too. If you get to a point in your life where you finally, recognize you're not the one in charge, that's a good day. You probably had some bad days leading up to that one, just like our buddy Nebuchadnezzar did. But when you come to that point, when you realize that I'm not in charge, I am not in charge as much as I want to be in charge, I'm not. When you let go of the reins, that's the day that the Lord's waiting for. He's actually waiting for you to let go and for you to just admit, get to that place of humanity where you recognize you're not the center of the world. I mean, it's hard enough for us. Imagine Nebuchadnezzar when he is the center of the world, so to speak. He is the king of the known world, civilized world, and as magnificent as they made it, he is number one. He's on the top. You think you got trouble thinking you're the center? Well, if you have that much attention, that much fame, if you would, and fortune, and then you might just walk on your balcony and say, "Look what I've done," right? But it doesn't take that. It doesn't. Your accomplishments on this earth are enough to send your pride right through the roof, even as a Christian. And this is one of those unfortunate things, all the baggage that we drag with us into this Christian walk, into our walk in the Spirit. We got a lot of that looks just like that fleshly walk. That's because this thing is still hanging around, right? We're going to get rid of it someday, but it is still here, and it doesn't appear to me that it weakens. You're supposed to get stronger, to put it in its place. But it doesn't appear to me that the flesh weakens. Yeah, which is a very interesting thought, by the way. Of all the things on this earth where, what's the word? Entropy, right? It's the winding down. It just deteriorates. Entropy. But somehow the flesh doesn't seem to have that problem. I do not know why. I suspect who's behind that. But that strength, it seems like it's sitting at the door, waiting for your little pious Christian deal to go along, and all of a sudden, weak spot, boom, and then hit it hard. And suddenly, that it's the Jekyll and Hyde thing, right? I always get the image of Bugs Bunny's. He did a Jekyll and Hyde skit one time too. That one sticks in my head. But you can change in an instant. The person that we call you, right, is suddenly listening to the flesh instead of your spirit, and now who's running the show? The one who's in control. I'm running the show. I'm the center of the world. Everything revolves around me. It's my agenda. This is my deal. I'm the one that should get my way or whatever. And it's just right up front. And we're right there with Nebuchadnezzar. But thank the Lord, he comes and he meets us right where we are in our idiocy, so to speak. And he woos us. And when we say yes, to him, I get it, not in charge. He'll come in and he'll set up camp. And now we got a helper, right? So and we walk this Christian life. Well, that is what I believe happened to Nebuchadnezzar. Now, it is towards the end of his life, apparently, that this occurs, this insanity and so forth, and then the coming around. It is the timeline. I'll just do it briefly. 605, by the way, is that common date that's known as when Nebuchadnezzar began his rule. It's also when he moved into Jerusalem the first time and took Daniel and his buddies. 605 BC. And took a few years, maybe 3, they figure, to get Daniel and his guys sort of ready for the palace. And Nebuchadnezzar came a few times after that, of course, and picked up the rest of Jerusalem. He broke down the walls in 586. That's when they took all, in 586, it was significant here for Belshazzar, by the way, because that's when he tore down the temple, Nebuchadnezzar did, and he took all the tools and all the cups, saucers, and all the stuff that was set apart for God, right? Nebuchadnezzar took that stuff. That's going to show up very early here in our chapter 5 account. Of course, during this time, that's during those 40 plus years, there is when Nebuchadnezzar had some of the other stories with Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and so forth. So, somewhere about 562, they say 562, 556. So there's a period of time here where Nebuchadnezzar dies, and then there's a succession of some kings. None of them last very long. So I'm not exactly sure. I haven't researched that. That's just what the historical record says. But then in 556, Nabonidus becomes king. Nabonidus isn't mentioned here, but Nabonidus is a prominent king of Babylon as well. But he liked to go touring. And so in one of these tours he was really into this god Marduk, is that it? But and he was out, I believe, building temples for Marduk or something. He was on a big mission for his god elsewhere. And so when he was gone, he put Belshazzar in charge as a co-regent. Belshazzar, or Belshazzar, however you want to pronounce that, he was Nabonidus' son. It's referred to as Nebuchadnezzar's son because it's understood that Belshazzar married Nebuchadnezzar's daughter. So, son-in-law would be appropriate father-in-law for Nebuchadnezzar. That's the way the family tree apparently unfolds there. So, this is how chapter 5 opens up. So I've given you a little bit of history there, just so as we step into some of this. It's a fairly lengthy chapter. There's, of course, we're going to end up with one of those famous, I always have images. Thank God for Sunday school and godly teachers and stuff like that. I got my favorite one here. I'm sorry if there's other teachers here of mine. But I remember Sunday school with Marie. But we had, they had all these wonderful illustrations, right? And they loved these kind of stories. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego in that fiery furnace. They could all color that thing up like crazy, right? And then, Daniel was good for them because Daniel in the lion's den, that's a big one, right? Well, there's another one, the writing on the wall. This one freaked you out, right? Kind of just his hand out there drawn on the wall. That's coming up in this chapter. Let's look at verse 1. Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. Okay. Is this guy busy, or does it seem like he has a bit of time on his hands? All right. Right? Just, it's party time in his head. That's where he's at. Yep.
Maybe that's from at least one Stanley Cup. And they're celebrating.
That's, I knew it was a while back, but I couldn't remember the date. So thank you, Brian. Okay. He'd have more than 1,000 though. He'd have more than that. Okay, but this is a celebratory time in his head. Now I'm going to step in immediately because I got to tell you this. This is a pretty significant backstory. The Medes and Persians are camped outside. They're right outside. I mean, not figuratively, literally. They're sitting out there. The Babylonians have become they grew so strong and so powerful and so arrogant in their pride. They just literally felt that nobody could get them. They had walls that were impenetrable. They were so cocky about it. This is what he did. He's having a party in his palace, celebrating the Leafs, and these other guys are outside, like a massive army. They're not worried. Not worried. He's not worried about preserving food for 2 years because of the siege or whatever. Not worried. Totally arrogant. Doesn't feel he's in any jeopardy at all. This is how chapter 5 opens up. It is going to be the last day of his life. He doesn't know it. It's very bizarre how we are in this world, right? We don't know when our last day is. We do not. God told us that. You're not going to know. Right? Yes.
I've heard that the great men of God thought about their death every day. Made a point of it.
Well, he's not.
That today might be my last day.
Now, granted, when the Leafs win is not the time to think about it. I get that, but we're supposed to be ready. He's not ready in any way, shape, or form. Belshazzar is not. Now you get this, you get the sense from this, the way it's set up as well, that he wouldn't have the job except for Dad went away. And he's got a lot of that attitude with it. He's in charge. He's considered the king, so to speak. And we'll get a little glimpse of some of this, of course. But so he has brought in these 1,000 of his lords, and he's drinking wine with them. Verse 2. Belshazzar, whilst he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem. Now, he's not referring to his father Nabonidus, because he's off doing his Marduk thing, right? But he's referring to his father Nebuchadnezzar, and I can only imagine this because Nebuchadnezzar is a big deal. Okay? Like Nebuchadnezzar was a big deal because of his reign and what he did and how he built up Babylon to its absolute magnificent status. And so it's sort of name dropping, I think, a bit, but he's not, he's going back to Nebuchadnezzar's conquests. And now he's, for whatever reason, and I don't know the significance here other than it's his last day, and he's making a very bad mistake, as people do.
Well, you mentioned the arrogance.
Yes.
They're drinking wine, so they already have cups. They don't need more cups.
No, that's right. Yes.
And then he asks, well,
Yes.
That's a particular thing on arrogance.
And there's something about that, Alan, because the way I read it, at least I understand, is they didn't come out before. It's not like Nebuchadnezzar said, okay, well, let's party and bring out those cups. God took offense to this. And the timing of it is such that Belshazzar is the one who brings it out. But he says, commands them to bring them out, which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver and of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. Okay. Obviously, using those vessels in ways that they were never meant to be used, right? Now, you've heard me do this before, and I'll just do a little reiteration of it, but these are things that have been sanctified for God, set apart for God. And what I use often for the analogy that God gave us is the setting apart of the seventh day. He sanctified it. He set that seventh day apart. The day was holy. These vessels are set apart. They're for God's use specifically. They have been set apart. They're not to have tea at 3 o'clock in the afternoon deal. They are for the temple rituals and worship time. That's what they are set apart for. Now, do the vessels have a mind of their own? No. Does the seventh day have a mind of its own? No. God is telling the Israelites, he tells them in Deuteronomy, he tells them elsewhere, these things are set apart for my use. He does it in Exodus, by the way, too. But he says these are vessels that are set apart for my use. In Genesis, he says the seventh day is set apart for me. Right? Now, be ye holy, for I am holy. Now the rest is up to you and me. Will you use those vessels that I have here for the temple use? Will you use them only for the temple service? Or will you take them out and misuse them? The seventh day that I set apart, will you do what I ask you to do? That is it set apart in you? Have you set it apart? Or have you not? This temple that I gave you, the temple of the Holy Spirit that I made, will you set that apart for my use? I have sanctified you. When you got born again, I sanctified you. I set you apart for my use. The rest is up to you. God sanctified the seventh day. God sanctified these vessels. God sanctified our bodies for his use. The rest is up to you. Did they honor the seventh day? Some did. And some misused it. Did they sanctify the temple vessels? Yeah, some did. And some did not. And that it arrives right with us. Are you using yourself for what God asked you to be used for? Or are you using yourself for something else? Now, there's sorts of hands up here, and I'll get to them now. I think this one was first. I don't know that now, but
Well, I just find it ironic that here, these vessels that are set apart for God, that Belshazzar brings them out for his last meal.
He doesn't know it's the last meal, but he brings it out.
But that is my point. He brings them out for his last meal. And if we would know the time when we were going to die, how different would we react?
That's good. I like that.
The sanctification of temple articles, is that of the development of the sanctifications of icons in all of Christendom?
Go further, Alan. You're going to have to clarify.
Well, the Roman Catholic Church has set up all kinds of icons as to what?
Ritual wise, yeah. Uh, are you asking if it's still pertinent today? Not in, no, in this way. Whatever Christ did on the cross has settled that for backwards and forwards. Yeah. So there's things that he did away with at the cross that were from the Old Testament, of course, and then there's things that have not yet been put away because lying is always wrong. Lying was wrong before. Revelation talks of lying being, serious kind of thing. So what things are put away? Anything that he managed on the cross. So being, for instance, they were sanctified. They were to be set apart as a people. So that they would never forget, I'm going to give you special food, right? So they gave them, God gave them a special diet. They were to adhere to that. It was a sin. It was a sin to eat the wrong food. Christ came, bang. Now sanctification comes through him. And all that ritual of sanctification is taken care of and fulfilled in Jesus Christ. So all that other sanctification is done. Now the sanctification happens through the blood of Jesus Christ being applied to your life. And when it's done, okay, so then now it's applied. Now Peter is told, eat. And I go, no, Lord, I'm too good for that. I don't do that. I'm no sinner. He says, eat. I said, Lord, I haven't done it all my life. I'm not going to eat. I'm going to start now. Lord says, eat. What I have cleansed, you don't call unclean anymore, right? He cleaned it up. It's done. That piece is done. He is very specific. That's done. That is finished. So those pieces would fall in with that sanctification ritual aspect of worship. If you're in my, but Belshazzar's in a different place right now. He's going to get a spanking, a serious one. But he is misusing, and God is talking to us. He's going to talk to them. Of course, he's going to talk to every generation after through what he's doing here. He is telling us what I sanctify. And to us today as Christians, he's saying, I have sanctified you, your body. Are you using it for me? Again, because you have the same, if you want to call it a privilege, you've got the privilege to not sanctify yourself. You have free will. You do what you want. That's what they say, right? And you can. But you will be making unholy what God has said is holy. You're going to use it for unholy things. Maggie, your hand is up.
God spanks his kids. I think this is judgment.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for that. Yeah.
I also see a correlation between where Alan was saying
Yeah.
about the articles of the church, so to speak.
Okay.
What he had done there is he took Nebuchadnezzar's, or the Jewish goblets and some
Vessels,
cups and saucers that were old, right?
Yeah.
But they worshipped them. Remember you read?
Yeah,
The gods of silver and gold.
Yeah.
What has many of the
Yes.
I'll just boil it down. Denominations today,
Sure.
with their icons,
Yeah.
worship the icons, and it's no different.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And it's right modern.
And God doesn't sort of, mince words. It's just,
Yeah.
you're worshiping demons, you're worshiping him
Yeah.
kind of thing. And that's it. Yeah, I agree 100%. Okay, let's step further here. They brought this out. Verse 4, they drank wine and praised the gods. There that is, right? Verse 5, in the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Now, I don't know. I get a kick out of how the Lord uses his creativity to mess with us. But I've said this before as well. I'll do a lot of repeat. The Lord can get your attention. I've had my kids come and they said, "Well, not sure what to do here, and I'm not sure what the Lord would have me doing." And I tell them, "Look, buddy, one thing I have learned: if the Lord wants to get your attention, He'll get your attention. If you want to know you're going the wrong way, He will let you know you're going in the wrong way. And He'll give you peace when you're going the right way, but He will let you know if you're going the wrong direction. He says, I chastise my children. It doesn't happen by chance. It's not like, well, let's see, who should we spank today? You watch your kids, they're going, hey, he's doing something wrong. I think we should, use this as a learning opportunity. And the Lord is able to get our attention. Now, whether we are his child or not, he's able to get our attention. Now, he did it with dreams with Nebuchadnezzar, right? And of course, then spiraled him into this insanity, delirium thing. With Belshazzar, he's going to do it with a super freaky reality. I mean, this isn't a vision. You know what I'm saying? You could do this in a vision. You could do it all in a dream. He's just laying in his bed and he, jumps up and goes, man, I just had the scariest dream. It's not what's happening. This is like surreal kind of stuff. And this finger is writing on the wall. So, I don't know, but there seems to be a little bit more of an exclamation mark on this one. The Lord is doing a little extra than, in my view, than a dream in Belshazzar's head. He's not using a dream. Now, note, who's going to get called in? Same guy. Daniel's going to get called in, right? The dream guy, right? But, let's move on. He's going to do something pretty wild here. Then the king's countenance was changed. No kidding. Verse 6. And his thoughts troubled him.
Yeah.
Now, here too, the Lord isn't going to be short on the description of what's happening to this guy. Right? He could have said, well, he was astonished. Well, yeah, that makes sense. But he's going to go at lengths to make sure you understand he has got Belshazzar's attention. He says his countenance was changed. Right. I bet all the blood went out of his face. Gone. White. Right. His thoughts troubled him. Yeah. When you see something that no longer lines up with anything you've seen before, like nothing you've ever seen before, you got no place to put this for reference. There is nothing there. Nothing in the memory banks. Nothing here. This is something brand new. I got to tell you a little story. This is a cute one. But our granddaughter, Lucy, was with her mom, and they were in Mexico. And it was this a pet store, or where was this? But there was a parrot there. And Anna was holding Lucy, and they were looking at this parrot. And apparently this parrot could talk. So Anna was trying to get this parrot to talk. And she would say hello and hello, and it didn't respond at all. So, but she was trying to talk, describe to Lucy, her daughter, that, the parrot could talk, kind of, but it didn't talk. So they turned around and they started walking away, and all of a sudden they hear, hello. And they stopped, and she turned around, and Anna walked back and she says, hello, did you see, right? And then it says hello. And Lucy saw an animal talk for the first time in her little life, and she burst into tears. This isn't supposed to happen. Animals don't talk, right? This was a Belshazzar moment. Hands don't just appear. Because your brain goes into this, my world has been shaken. And I don't know where to put this, because this is outside of the known realm. Now, Lucy's going to grow up and realize, well, no, parrots talk. They don't really talk, but they can mimic sounds, and it sounds like they're talking, right? Okay, you get that, right? Once they start doing math, we're in trouble. This is what's happening to Belshazzar. He is just freaked out, we call it, and it rightfully so, because he's seeing something nobody that I've ever known of, right, and you've ever known of has seen this. Now, his countenance changed, his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loose. Now, I don't know what's all going on. I like to talk to a doctor about what's happening here. But something serious, physiological is happening to the guy's body. This isn't just, a few anxious thoughts. But the stress and adrenaline and everything that's flying in his body has done all sorts. Yeah.
This happens to women when they're
Yeah, exactly.
There's a
right.
hormone that's released that
Loosens,
joints,
gets
so
ready
it
for the
makes-
birth
yeah.
canal to be wide
I've
enough
never
for
heard
the
of
baby.
it happening to man.
Yeah, well, we do now. But so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another. Suffice it to say, this is not a kingly image that you want to present to any of your subjects,
1,000 of them.
right? You could, Aragorn stand up and he'd pull his sword and say, "Oh, let's go at it." I don't know. He'd dive at the hand or whatever. You'd try to fight back something. That's not what we're seeing here. What you are seeing is what is known in the world as a coward. That's the only polite way to say it. Yeah, it could be an unknown. Yeah, it could be, but you could still be brave. You could be, but he is not. He is fearful and recognizing that he is not in control. And he is not at peace, and he's not who he thought he was. Healthy place for us to be as humans. Healthy place to be where you go, the Bible says we're not supposed to think of ourselves higher than we ought. No lower, by the way, as well. No lower than you ought. Because you have self-esteem that Jesus Christ built into you. And that's where your self-esteem is. But so there's you're no lower than that, but no higher than that. Saved by grace and mercy. You didn't earn it, right? Don't deserve it, right? He sets you at a level spot, absolutely in the center of the apple of his eye. But when you think that you are at the top, and when you think that you've got no problems and the arrogance and pride has run amok, and then you start misusing God, and he wants to use you as an example, then this is what's showing up. And he says, the king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers, and the king spake and said to the wise men, so they show up at Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Why third? Nabonidus is number one. Belshazzar is number two. Only place available. You don't have my place. Okay? Number three. You get number three spot. Okay? Yes.
Who is this number one?
His biological father, Nabonidus. Nabonidus is actual king. This is a co-regent, they call. He gets, only because Nabonidus is traveling, if you would, with his own army, doing his own thing. He put his son to sit on the throne while he was gone in Babylon.
Is this in the Bible?
Nabonidus is not recorded, but it is recorded in history of the Babylonians. So they can track it through, and they know, for a lot of times they were saying this is wrong. Belshazzar wasn't Nebuchadnezzar's son, and then they found the information. Yeah. But, so it's in the Babylonian historical records, if you would. So now, he calls them all in. Offers the third spot. They seem to drop these third spots, or like Nebuchadnezzar do. He dropped that next spot. A lot of incentive there. I guess as long as you remain number one spot, you can control whatever is below you. But verse 8. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. I've read that a bunch of times. How many times you've gone through the Bible and I've read this? It never occurred to me, but I found it during my study this past week, or maybe last week. But these, the word, many, tekel of farson or whatever, right? These are not words that aren't familiar to Aramaic. And the Babylonians would have known the words. So this is interesting. These aren't new words. They're words that were known in the Aramaic. They're real words. and they were written on the wall. And what they're saying is that it makes no sense to them because it's word, two the same, and then third word and fourth word, and they're just words. But they make no sense to the wise man. And so when he calls them in, he says, look, what does this mean? What does this mean? Right? And it said, they can. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled. When? When he doesn't get an answer, right? They couldn't figure it out. They couldn't make known the interpretation. Then was the king Belshazzar greatly troubled. He was troubled before this. I don't know where he got to now. And his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished. Now everybody's getting a little freaked out. Well, it's about time, I think. But they pause button. One thing is understood by everybody that's present. Somebody higher than them wants them to know something. Right? I think that much is obvious, or it seems apparently obvious to the people. Why do we have writing? Isn't it remarkable that God chose this form to preserve his word for us? It's in writing. Why? Well, because there's information that we desperately need to know.
Nobody suggested ignoring the right.
No. I love that, Helen. That's a good one. Yeah. Let's just keep partying, right? Nobody said that, right? Nobody said let's just keep drinking.
Because that's how ridiculous it is that we
I
just
think-
ignore this.
Yeah, God would not have us ignore his word on the wall any more than this, or vice versa. Now he wants us to pause at it and then dive in and understand what he's talking about, right? Come to me and figure out what I'm saying. Because I do want to communicate with you. Is there a barrier between me and you? Yes, right now there is. Your spirits are dead. They died at that tree way back. You guys didn't even know that, but you're dead. And I'm going to break into that supernaturally, and I want to talk to you. Because you really need to hear what I'm saying. Desperate isn't a strong enough word for what you guys need to hear. It's you need to hear this. And he steps into, again, he does it. What with these guys? Right? They were supposed to be the city on a hill that was speaking to the world, right? Not about themselves, but about the God they served. And as a light on the hill, they were to draw all mankind. They were supposed to go, what's going on? The Queen of Sheba. What's going on over there? I'm going to go check this out. That's what they were intended to do and be. And they got to a point where this was without remedy. You guys fail. All right? We're going to do something else. Going into captivity. And now he's going to do some pretty... Daniel is full of some of the most dramatic intervention of God in individuals' lives. Stepping in and showing off. God is showing off. He's going to step in. Like he did some showing off with these guys, right? It didn't click. It was supposed to. Agatha.
Well, all this, just the writing on the wall, I think for our day and age, the writing is on the wall. We are living the days of Revelation. And even Christians are denying it. And this is so baffling. But then the Lord just reminded me that this morning it was that when Jesus Christ was here, those people did not believe that he was the Son of God, that God was going to send.
Yeah.
And today nothing has changed. Even Christians don't believe that we are living in the end times. You just have to look at what happened when my parents always said that in the end times everything would go so fast. And look at how our government is just, it's just unbelievable what's happening.
Feels like it's snowball going downhill, right?
Yes.
Yep. Agreed. Okay. Verse 9 again. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished. Everybody's freaked out now. Verse 10. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house. So she is drawn in. I'm not sure if this is a request that she come and join, or just because of all the great commotion she's brought in. Now, this is interesting to me. The queen. Who was everybody else there? There was a lot of women, concubines, and all sorts of stuff. So this particular one has a little bit more hierarchy, power in reign, and so forth. So the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. There is a man in thy kingdom, in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say thy father, made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. For as much as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams and showing of hard sentences and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. I'm going to pause there. There's not a doubt in her mind. Do you think that this is the first time that she has stirred thoughts around about this Daniel who did what he did? Not a chance. God makes impressions in people that are willing to have impressions made upon them. Others will just shut down those impressions and will write them off as circumstantial, write them off as happen chance, write them off as whatever, one of the gods. Now she's in, excuse me, she seems to be in the same place that Nebuchadnezzar was for many, many years. One of the gods, right, was this God of Israel. But there seems to be a soft spot, at least one place in her, where she goes, well, I know what I've seen. I know what I saw in the past. I know what he did. I know the guy's name. I can get him right now. And again, what's interesting to me is he didn't go in with all the other soothsayers and all the other Chaldeans and all the other magicians. It was just like with Nebuchadnezzar. He called them all, and then later Daniel comes in. Right? There is something to be said about an appropriate entrance. And the Lord's going to make a mark. But he's going to come in, Maggie.
It's also like, oh, I guess we'll pray as a last resort. We'll try
Yeah.
everything else first. And if that doesn't work, then we'll pray.
Yes. Well, this is that kind of thing. But what I wanted to bring out a bit was there are those in the world that are watching. And there are that have seen things in their lives, and they have made a difference. And there's going to come an opportunity in their lives yet when it can make a bigger difference. And I think that what's happening here is one of those. But I don't hear any doubt in this queen's voice about whether Daniel can or cannot do this. She's convinced. Isn't that amazing?
Is she a believer?
I don't think yet, but I think she's well on her way. Like Nebuchadnezzar again. She knows this guy can get this done. And what's interesting, though, is that Belshazzar doesn't seem to recall. Or, why didn't he think of it? Or any of the other guys. Well, of course, they got the jealousy thing going, right? And all that. Now, don't forget the offer. Third in the kingdom. Now, that's no small deal. The only downside I see is you'd have to be under Belshazzar. Right? Nabonidus isn't even here. But this other guy I have to deal with. But even in that, Now, what I want to point out here too is these guys, all these magicians and so forth, they weren't even willing to tackle words that they could read and make something up. They just couldn't get there. They couldn't form a cognitive kind of a reaction. Well, maybe it means this. Huddle together. Well, we could say this and this. Let's all agree. We'll split the kingdom. They didn't. They couldn't come up. God is working in a way that nobody gets to do the deal except for who? The guy he's assigned, Daniel. And there's going to be places God has got assigned for you and for me, right? He would have you be at that place at the right time. And you've done some things for him in the past. Maybe they were in the mind of the person, and now they call. I can make up any kind of story, but God does the story writing. And he can bring someone across your path that you have influenced years and years and years ago. And now here they are. Or you just get to reap what someone else has sown. Regardless, she's right. We're going to close here in a moment. So, then was Daniel brought in. This is verse 13. Before the king, and the king spake and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel, which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? Apparently he's not familiar with the guy. I don't know. I guess, right? I have even heard of thee, that the Spirit of God is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. I think he's repeating what the queen said. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known unto me the interpretation thereof, but they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee, that thou canst make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now, if thou canst read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet, have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shall be the third ruler of the kingdom. Of course, Daniel's being offered worldly stuff, which means nothing to him, right? It means nothing to him. And it should mean little to us as well, right? I mean, it shouldn't be part of the equation when you're called in to do God's work. True? Now, excuse me. Yeah, but Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, keep it, and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king and make known to him the interpretation. This is one of those places too, when you get called by the Lord to do some work, you will recognize, yep, this is one of those places, Lord wants me right here, right now, doing this, and I don't need the cash, I don't need the rewards and all that stuff. You're all good. I'm supposed to be here, I'm supposed to do this right now. Daniel has been, okay, we didn't get time, maybe we'll touch on this next time, but what's been going on in Daniel's life? Well, we're 40, 50 years into this deal. He's just been living in the palace, living his life, and he's got limited time just like you and I. We only get this one. It's not like he's going, well, okay, get this one over with, I get another one, in Israel. This is it. This is his life. He's in captivity. He is apart from his family. He's apart from his people. He's apart from where they worship. And he has been asked to do God's work in a place of, the heathens, in the midst. And I don't know, he might have got called along the way, but it seems like 2 or 3 times, right? What do you do the rest of the time? Well, he sanctified you, be sanctified. Wherever you are, be holy wherever you are. Wherever he has put you. Do your work for God, right? and just be steadfast. Well, what if he doesn't call on me? Well, you don't know that. He may or he may not right now. Regardless, you're supposed to be doing what God has you there for right now. Just do the next right thing. Yeah, before God. We're going to pause with that. We'll stop for today. We'll pick that up next time. Life isn't always easy. It's easy when you read it in narrative and it goes 40 years go like that and you're till the next exciting thing. But that's not, right? That's not real life in terms of, for the most part. It is a series of doing everyday things along the way, being ready when God calls in everything. And he's actually calling all the time for us to be faithful. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word and the beauty of it. I pray that you would bless our study this morning. Help us, Lord, to be prepared, to be used by you just when you call, in exactly the right place, the right time, and all. And that is all up to you. Thank you also, Lord, that we have come to a place of recognition that we are not in charge and that you are. Help us to remain there, even in our Christian walk. Lord, we quickly step into the flesh and start walking in pride. I pray that you would help us with that, just to crucify the flesh. Walk in the Spirit. Be light on a hill for this world to see. In Jesus' name, amen.